The screenshot is timestamped 2:08 in the morning, and it shows two bottoms. The real one is at the bottom of the screen where it belongs, 81 feet down, the hard red line of the true lakebed, same as it had read all night. The other one is at 40 feet, a second floor, drawn straight across the entire width of the sonar cone, flat and hard and bright as the real bottom, hanging in the middle of the water with nothing holding it up. And in the corner of that screenshot, in the little depth box, you can watch it across the 4 images they saved. 41 feet, then 39, then 36, then 33. It was rising. Whatever painted a false floor under their boat was coming up toward it a foot every few minutes, holding dead level the whole way, like the lid of something closing from below. My name is Gil Becard. I've owned and run the marina on that reservoir for 31 years, and I'm the one who has the dock camera footage, and I knew Floyd Cobb and Darrell Sin for most of their lives. And I am going to tell you about the last night they fished my water, in order, because I've watched the footage more times than is good for a man, and I need to set it down somewhere outside my own head. The reservoir is a big, deep impoundment up in the hills, 80-some feet at the dam, full of standing timber and old creek channels, and more crappie than any honest man will admit to in public. I'm not naming it, because people still night fish it, and I'd rather they didn't stop. And I'd rather they didn't think too hard about why I'd want them to. Floyd and Darrell were night fishermen. Crappie pile up on the deep brush after dark, and you fish them under lights. You hang a green submersible lamp over the side. It pulls the bait pulls the crappie, and you sit there in the dark over 80 feet of water and pick them off one at a time off the electronics. It's a patient, quiet, technical kind of fishing. You live and die by your depth finder. Floyd ran a good one, a modern unit that lets you save a screenshot of the sonar with a button because he liked to mark exactly where the school stacked so he could find it again. That habit is the only reason this story has any evidence at all. I want to say plainly that these were good, careful boat handlers. Floyd had run that lake 40 years. Darrell was younger, 50s, but no greenhorn. Coast Guard in his 20s ran the water like he was born on it. They wore their inflatables. They told me their plan and their off time every single trip because that's the deal on my dock. You sign out, you sign in. And if you don't sign in by your time, I call the sheriff. They never missed a sign-in 15 years. They were the 2 men on that whole lake I never worried about. The dock camera is mine. I put it up after a break-in, a cheap weatherproof unit on the boathouse that watches the launch and the end of the courtesy dock. Records to a box in my office, time-stamped 30 days on a loop. It films my dock all night, whether anybody's there or not. I want you to remember, it's just a camera pointed at a dock. It only filmed 2 things that mattered. It filmed them leaving, and it filmed what came back. They launched at 9:50 p.m. on a Thursday in October. The camera has them clear, 2 men, Floyd's base boat, lights and gear, Darrell coiling the bowline as they idle out. Routine. They signed the dock book. Floyd wrote their off time as 1 a.m. because they were old men and 1 in the morning was late for them. What happened out there I have from 2 places. Floyd's saved screenshots, which the sheriff pulled off the unit, and the 1 short conversation I had with Darrell before he stopped talking about it. So here's the night as best I can give it to you, and I'll be careful to tell you which parts are on the screen and which parts are a frightened man's account. They were on their brush pile in 60 feet of water by 10, marking fish, catching them. Ordinary good fishing till about midnight. Then Darrell told me the bite just quit, not slowed, quit like a switch, and the crappie that had been stacked on the brush all came off the bottom at once and went up, which crappie don't do, and balled up tight near the surface around the light. Bait 2. Everything in the water column came up and crowded the top, he said, like the floor of the lake had gotten too hot to stand on. And then they reeled up to move, and the jigs came back warm. Darrell made a point of this, and I didn't understand it till I saw the screenshots. You fish a 16th-ounce jig 60 feet down in 55-degree October water, it comes up cold. It's been sitting in the cold dark for an hour. Theirs came up warm to the hand, both of them, every cast after that. The deep water had warmth in it that hadn't been there, rising up through the column, and the fish were running ahead of it, and Floyd, being Floyd, stopped fishing and started saving screenshots because something was wrong with his lake and he wanted the record. Here's where the screenshots take over, because they're the part nobody can argue with. The first saved image is timestamp 12:51 a.m. It shows the true bottom at 78 feet, the school of fish jammed up near the surface, and just starting to form, faint at about 50 feet, a horizontal return. Thin, easy to call a thermocline, the temperature layer that fish stack on. And that's surely what Floyd thought it was, because his next saved shot is 20 minutes later, like he was keeping an eye on it. By the 1:30 image, the thin line has become a hard, solid, bright return at 46 feet, drawn flat across the whole width of the cone, edge to edge, as bright as the real lake bed under it. A thermocline doesn't read like the bottom. This read like the bottom. Two bottoms, one stacked over the other, the lake suddenly half as deep as it had been an hour before. And it was level. That's the detail the man at the state who looked at these couldn't get past. A real false return, a bait ball, a gas pocket, a layer of debris, has texture, it sags and humps and drifts. This was flat to the pixel, dead level across 40 feet of cone width, and it stayed flat as it rose. His write-up uses the phrase, a planar surface of uniform hardness, maintaining horizontal attitude during ascent. A flat, hard lid staying perfectly flat coming up. The 2:08 screenshot is the one I opened with. The 4-image sequence where you can watch the depth number fall, 41, 39, 36, 33. And in every one of those frames there are fish arcs above the false bottom, crowded, frantic, fleeing up toward the boat. And below the false bottom, there is nothing. Not dark water, not the true lake bed. The unit can't see through it at all. The whole bottom half of the screen below that rising flat line is blank. Floyd Cobb's depth finder in 81 feet of water could no longer find anything beneath 40 feet because something the size of the entire sonar cone had slid in over the bottom of the lake and was lifting it up toward the hull. The last saved screenshot is 2:17 a.m. The false bottom is at 19 feet. There are no fish on the screen anymore. They've all gone up past the transducer, up into water too shallow to read, packed against the surface around the boat. And the flat line is 19 feet down and rising. And that's the last image Floyd saved, because I think that's when they ran. I want you to sit in that boat for a second. It's 2 a.m. You're a mile from any ramp. 80 feet of water under you that just turned into 19 feet of water and shrinking. Every fish in the lake is jammed against the surface trying to get away from something coming up under you. And your jigs are warm and your depth finder can't see the bottom anymore because the bottom is rising. Do you run the big motor and risk it in the dark over standing timber, or do you sit still and hope it stops? Tell me in the comments what you do, because they ran and the dock camera filmed what came in and the boat was wrong. The dock camera timestamps the boat's return at 2:40 a.m. They'd signed out for 1 o'clock. I was asleep. Nobody called me. They made it back to my dock on their own, which is the only mercy in this whole thing. I've watched the clip more times than I'll tell you. The boat comes in fast, too fast. Floyd never came in like that, and swings to the courtesy dock. And here's the thing I can't make anybody understand who hasn't seen it. The boat is riding high. A base boat with 2 grown men and a full day's gear sits down on its lines. You know what a loaded boat looks like in the water. This boat is up, riding light, high on the chine, like it's running empty, like the water it's sitting in can't get a proper hold of it. The freeboard's wrong by half a foot. 2 men are clearly in it. It rides like there's no one aboard. They tie up. Floyd gets out first, and he's moving like an old man at the end of his strength, and he stands on my dock with both hands on the rail and just looks back at the water. Darrell gets out, and Darrell doesn't look at the water at all. And Darrell is the one who told me the little he ever told me 3 days later in my office, before he went quiet for good. I'll give you his sentence, and then I'm done with this part, because the spec for telling these right is that you don't dress it up. He said, Gil, when it came up level with us, it didn't break the surface. It just held there, right under the boat, holding us up, and it was warm. The whole lake under us was warm. And we sat on top of it, Gil, and it carried us most of the way in before it let us down. Then he went home, and inside the year, he sold his boat, and he never fished again. And he was not an old man, Officially, there's nothing, no incident, no injury, no missing person that night. They came home. The sheriff pulled the screenshots and the dock footage for a welfare check because I made a nuisance of myself. And the file says no determination, no offense, equipment reviewed. And that was the end of it as far as the county's concerned, but it wasn't the end because the second bottom didn't leave with them. I started hearing it from other night fishermen that fall and the next spring. Quiet. The way men tell you a thing they don't want to have seen. A flat, hard return at 40 feet over the deep basin, rising sometimes, then gone. Jigs coming up warm, fish stacking at the surface for no reason. I keep a folder now. 11 sets of screenshots from 8 different boats, 3 different brands of electronics, all over 2 years, all showing the same flat level lid where there's no bottom. To make one, the state fellow says it's impossible for that many units to share a malfunction. I know it's impossible. That's why I keep the folder. And here's the last thing, the one that made me finally say it out loud. Darrell Sen, who sold his boat and quit the water and wouldn't talk. Darrell drowned last March, not in my reservoir, in his own farm pond, 4 feet deep, a pond he'd waded 100 times to clear the weed screen in hip boots in daylight. They found his boots on the bank, set side by side, and Darrell in the middle of 4 feet of water. And the coroner couldn't say how a strong swimmer drowns in water he can stand up in. The county called it undetermined. I called Floyd Cobb the night I heard, the only other man who was in that boat, and Floyd was quiet a long time on the phone. And then he said one thing. He said, "It rode us high that night, Gil. It held us up. I think it just remembered it was still holding one of us." And then Floyd asked me, please, to take the camera off the dock so it would stop filming the water at night. And I did. And I haven't fished after dark since. The screenshots are in a folder in my office, and the dock camera is in a drawer, unplugged, and the reservoir is still on the maps, and the brush piles are still full of crappie. People still launch from my ramp. I don't stop them, and I don't tell them this because I've got no proof of anything except a flat line on a fish finder that shouldn't be there and a boat that came in riding too high. Some nights, late, I walk down to the empty dock and look at the black water, and I think about how a lake that deep has all that room underneath, and how something down there learned one October night that it could come up and take the room for itself. These are original stories written for this channel. If you've ever night fished deep water and watched a second bottom rise toward your boat and felt your jig come back warm, the submission form is in the description. The next case file is already open.